It's rough out there, in the world. Some of us turn to writing for solace and inspiration. Text that helps us take in the dark and find the light. So if you are someone who wraps themselves in words to warm your heart, or maybe just looking for a little help getting through the day, week, year, join us as we talk to people about the pieces of writing they use to bolster their souls and remember their way. The good bones that remind us we can make this place beautiful. Hello, and welcome to the Finding Good Bones podcast. A literary podcast, where we discuss the writing that helps us sit with the dark and still find a way to look towards the light. I am one of your hosts, Kate.
I'm your other host, Amy.
And we together are both of your hosts. Sorry. Amy, what are you reading?
I'm still on my giant reread of the October Day series by Shauna McGuire. I am now on maybe book 5. It's called One Salt Sea. I'm gonna keep reporting what book I'm on till everybody picks up this series and understands that it's one of the best fantasy series ever in the world.
Yeah. I mean,
yes.
I feel like I've spent enough time on Shauna's website that I have basically read them now. I haven't.
No, you haven't.
I've been spending a lot of time. She's got some great fonts on her website.
Nice.
It's real fun.
Well, what are you reading?
Well, I followed suit and got myself a copy of Why Fish Don't Exist. And I am reading it now, and it's so good. I guess I'm about halfway. I started it last night and I fell asleep, which was dumb. But it is so good. But I do find myself, I'm learning about the guy, but I want more of Lulu Miller's life, like, all the time. Like, I'm like, yeah. He is famous, but, like, what's going on with you? Mm-hmm. So I'm sure I'm about halfway. So I'm sure. Also, Amy got a copy and was reading it.
I did. I haven't started it yet.
Yeah. Jumped on that bandwagon.
I had to wait for the emotional energy before I open it, and I haven't had that yet. So.
Oh yeah. Super fair. Yeah. Super fair. I'm like, just dive in.
Yeah. Okay. I want to introduce our guest now because I want to get started on talking to her. Our guest today is Lani Diane Rich. She is a New York Times best-selling author and writing coach, and she teaches a year-long writing workshop called The Year of Writing Magically, where she writes her novels alongside her students. Her book, How Story Works, is a simple, elegant guide to the craft of storytelling and is available now on Amazon and Audible. And let me just interject here that I know Lani from listening to How Story Works, the podcast, and also Still Pretty, the Buffy the Vampire Slayer podcast.
Same.
Yes. And I just did last year, The Year of Writing Magically, and it was wonderful. So, connections with Lani everywhere.
Amy has been talking about it. At least one time. Every time I have seen her in person or spoken with her on the phone, maybe not every time we've texted, but not. But yeah, she raves about this program, so we will certainly include links to all of this in the show notes. I myself am a listener of Still Pretty and How Story Works. And I'm pretty sure I have a copy of it around here somewhere.
You do?
Yeah, I know. It's somewhere.
Hi, Lani.
Hi, Lani.
You talk now. Hi.
Well, thank you guys so much for having me here on the show. I was so excited when I saw Amy mention in the little Discord that we have for the Year of Writing Magically that she was doing a podcast. And I was like, Amy's doing a podcast. How did I not know about this? So I immediately went, downloaded everything, listened to everything. And there have been other people who took the course that I got to hear on the podcast, and it's just been so much fun. And I absolutely love the approach that you're taking to these discussions. So I was really excited when y'all invited me to be on here. So thank you.
Awesome. We're happy.
We are very excited. And we are. Dear listener, my apologies. Oh, just a little starstruck, at least me, Kate Caldwell. I'm starstruck, so forgive me.
I got past mine by taking the course, so I encourage that.
Yeah. You get over it real quick when you spend a lot of time with me.
Just saying. We were down in the trenches together, so
That's right.
Yeah.
It's a bonding experience.
It
definitely.
is. We won't call it trauma bonding. It was just bonding.
Just bonding.
It's a thing. Just regular bonding.
It was
that
just
does happen
bonding
on occasion.
Yeah. No, it was awesome. It was awesome. Okay, so Lani has brought us an excerpt from a song, but first she wants to talk through a story before she tells us about the excerpt. So go ahead, Lani.
I do. Well, I'll tell you what the excerpt is. I mean, it's from Leonard Cohen's Anthem, which when I was listening to the first few episodes of the podcast, I was like, oh my God, like this is Anthem. Like Anthem is absolutely all of these things. And so like I have a little bit of context for how I came to this particular song, this particular snippet from this song that I'm going to share with you. And the thing is that like I knew this famous line, but I didn't know where it came from or where I'd heard it. I don't think I'd actually heard the song itself until like last year when I was looking for songs for the book that I was writing alongside all of my students in the year of Writing Magically. But when I found this song, this line, it just like it hit me right in the gut. So the context behind what this particular song means to me is some years ago, I married a very bad person. He lied to me about everything, like who he was, what he was. And by the time I found out even a little of it, we had already been married for a year. And, I was married to him for a total of 6 years. And the thing about emotional abuse is like, it just hits different. When I was little, I was subjected to a fair amount of like physical abuse, and it is terrible. And I'm not minimizing physical abuse at all. But when someone physically harms you, like, who the bad guy is, with emotional abuse, they make you think you're the bad guy. It crawls inside of you. It does not end when the abuser leaves. And the emotional abuse of the kind that I suffered in my marriage takes all of that a step further. It uses love to get inside, right? So this kind of person will make you feel like the most loved person in the world, like 90% of the time. Yeah. And then the other 10%, they use whispers that sound loving to drop like little pellets of poison and self-doubt into your mind. You're not smart. You're not a good mother. You're kind of mean. You're not that attractive. So that when things seem obviously wrong, you think it's because of failings within you. So instead of questioning them, you question yourself, So in doing this, they install like a little button in your psyche, and with the subtlest of moves, they can hit it, and when they hit it, this pain radiates through you, shame, embarrassment. You spend hours, sometimes days, wondering what's wrong with you and why can't you fix it, And I have to say, like, the best cultural depiction I've ever seen of what happens to you in this kind of relationship is from The Lord of the Rings, like Wormtongue and Theoden, right? When Theoden finally frees himself of Wormtongue, he ages backwards. Yeah. And like that happened to me too. When I started to see him for what he was, he just would hit that button harder and harder and harder, basically debilitating me. And once he found a new victim and he had an exit strategy, because he doesn't have jobs. The women have jobs,
Right.
Yeah, to a certain degree.
So financial abuse. Yeah. So just
there was loads of financial abuse. He left me with $40,000 that I had to pay in debt and back taxes. And I just never went after him for it. It was in the divorce, but I would rather not have a relationship with him than go after him. I'd rather pay that money out.
Like so, it turns out that being rid of him is worth maybe just a little bit more than $40,000.
Cut off an arm. Yes, absolutely. I paid, right? So anyway, like he kept escalating things. And it got to the point where he escalated things so much that I could actually see that he wasn't okay, that there was something wrong with him.
Yeah.
But it was so shocking to me because I could not reconcile my understanding of who he was and what we were with what was actually happening, because all the time I thought the badness had been coming from inside me. But now I could see that it was him, but that didn't make sense because we both knew that he was perfect and I was the one who was flawed. And also he loved me. Like I knew he loved me. So why would he do this to me? Right.
Yeah.
And it's so confusing. And people like my ex do this so that by the end of 6 or 7 years or 3 months or 8 years or whatever your sentence is, you are so volatile and hurt and traumatized that they can just point to you and say, see what I had to put up with? She's clearly crazy. And the new victim believes him when he says that everything you say is a lie, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
So all of this stuff, you know, towards the end, that's when the sexual assaults started. It was like he was waiting until he knew he had a way out before he would risk hurting me in a way that was actually clear. Right.
Physically tangible.
Yeah. I think it was just fun for him. And all of this is so beyond my comprehension at that time. So that's just the context for this moment, this like crystal clear moment that happened. And every now and again, we have one of those moments where it almost feels like you're living inside of a book because this scene just happens. And I was in absolutely excruciating pain during that time. I was walking through a Wegmans, which is a grocery store chain in the Northeast. I was living in Syracuse, New York at the time. I was like a zombie. I was stumbling from aisle to aisle in so much pain, I could hardly move. And then I walked through this like little electronic section they have. And at the bottom was one of those, I think they called them boogie boards, like they're little erasable boards, right? Where you write a note down, then you pull a sheet up, it disappears, you can write a note again. So they're like, you know, temporary little note boards, right? So I looked down at this boogie board and some kid had drawn something dumb. I think it was a butt pooping. I think that's what it was.
It might have been me. I could have drawn.
Right? I just froze and stared down at it, and like my entire brain just shut down. It was such a weird space. Like I wasn't really me. It was like I was watching myself on a video monitor. It's called dissociation. And it would be like another year or so before all of me would come back together and I would be like fully myself again. But that part of me, the real me, kind of hopped into my body at that moment. And she picked up that little board and erased the pooping butt. And she wrote, "There's a crack in everything. That's how the light gets in." And then she just left again. And I was there and I just stumbled out and bought some laundry detergent. Like, I don't even know what happened after that. You know, I remember though, putting the board back and looking down at it and then thinking, someone who needs that message is going to find it. Like someone who would have walked right past the pooping butt, but now they're going to see that and it's going to give them something. It's going to give them strength. It's going to give them comfort. It's going to do something for somebody else. And that to me just felt incredibly meaningful. So, you know, it took me a really long time to kind of feel like myself again, to sort of integrate all the dissociated parts of me from that experience. And then, you know, during that time, I wasn't writing novels. Like I had published my last novel in 2015. And then in the end of 2022, I was like, okay, I want to write again. Like I want to see if I can do this again. During those years, all of my energy went to healing. I could not have written. So I decided what I wanted in a writing workshop, couldn't find it, built it. That became the year of writing magically. The next thing I know, I'm in this thing and I need to build a soundtrack, which is one of the exercises that I give my students, is that during their discovery process, they build a soundtrack of music for their book, yada, yada. So as I'm going through this discovery process, I'm looking for music. I'm kind of keeping an eye out. And my eldest and I made a trip out to New York. We were going to an event and we were staying in this little Airbnb in the town where I grew up. And I was able to drive them around and show them all the places I'd been as a kid, you know. And one of the things that happened is that in that Airbnb, they had a record player and they used it decoratively. Like they didn't have any albums in there. They didn't have any vinyl. And I was like, how do you have a record player and no vinyl in an Airbnb? And I don't have a record player at home. So I was like, okay, kid, here we're going. We're going on a trip to this bookstore. We're going to pick out an album, right? And so they go in, they're looking at all the vinyl. I'm hanging out with my friends. Then finally we pull one out and it's Leonard Cohen's greatest hits, right? So we go back, we put that on the record player. We each have a glass of wine. We're sitting there talking. It was a really, really lovely night. And then Anthem starts playing. And again, I had never heard the song. I didn't know which song this line was from, right? Yeah. And I suddenly hear that song playing, and then I grab oh my God, I don't know, for any of you old enough, remember like the liner notes in an album where it would actually have the lyrics, right? Yes. So I go in and I start reading the lyrics and I'm like, oh my God, like this is the song. So I grabbed the song, I put it on when I got home, I put it on my soundtrack for that book. It was on the soundtrack. It played all the way through. And it felt like something that connected me to the person I was, right? Like the person who was inside during all of that abuse, who knew this line, you know? And so this is, anyway, the section of that song that I absolutely love. So I'll go ahead and read this section for you. The birds they sang at the break of day. Start again, I heard them say. Don't dwell on what is passed away or what is yet to be. Ring the bells that still can ring. Forget your perfect offering. There's a crack in everything. That's how the light gets in. So yeah, like that kills me, like every single time.
Oh yeah.
That kills me dead. And I did a podcast too, like during this very, very like terrible time. It's so raw. It is the rawest thing I've ever put out in public. But it's called Big Strong Yes. We started doing that a few months into the like healing experience for me. And my co-host Kelly Jones, Dr. Kelly Jones, had talked to me in that about the Japanese art of kintsugi, right?
Oh yeah,
right. Where when a cup or a plate is broken, they mend it with gold and making it even more beautiful than it was before. And the combination of that with this idea that the cracks are how the light gets in. And those cracks and those scars, they're going to be with you. Like you cannot go through life without accumulating some of that, you know? They are in you and you become more beautiful. This is the place that broke is the place that the light came through. And that light leaves that scar. It leaves that gold behind. And that is what makes you beautiful. It is part of your experience as a human. And so like, I kind of love all of those things together. You know, I like the crack. I like the light. I like the healing. I like the gold. You know, all of that together, I feel like is just so meaningful. And this is such a sad song. I mean, it really is. Like, I think he was writing from a more political standpoint, like the 60s and 70s, you know. But to me, this is just so deeply personal.
Also deeply personal because that's, you know, I think he really went back and forth between the two, but that's also, so this is a little bit after, but that's still the era when we get, you know, famous Blue Raincoat is one of my favorite Leonard Cohen songs. And it's actually one of the examples that we have for our guests on like what constitutes a finding good bones. Yeah. It just sounds weird, but I'll make it work eventually. But then also we get like, now there's no light in it. The dress rehearsal rag, which I don't know if you're familiar with it, but it is a very heavy song, that he actually wouldn't perform again after that. And so it's all songs of love and hate. And I think that album precedes, this one. Or at least it's kind of in that area. Anthem is definitely, it's where he gets more into like the very heavy like orchestration. So a lot of his early stuff, Leonard Cohen, is very like simple and on a guitar, but then Anthem is very produced, which is I also love, but it is different. You know, I think there's a lot, so there's so much, and thank you so much for sharing all of that and being willing to go to such a vulnerable place, especially like just right off the bat. Like, I don't know what Big Strong Yes was about, but like that was one.
after Big Strong Yes, like this is nothing. This is nothing. Well, plus like this was a very public thing at the time that it happened. We were running a podcast network. We had fans. People were speculating about what had happened all over the internet about me and my life. They found out things about him that I didn't know because they did online searches and stuff. It was devastating. It was like such a horrible. So then I went into like recording Big Strong. Well, you know, it happens, right? You know, I went into recording Big Strong Yes with Kelly, and I was at this point just starting up a new podcast network, and I was like, okay, I guess I'm just going to start doing this stuff. It's so friggin' raw. Like I can't listen to it. I cannot listen to it. It is so raw because it was in the early days when, you know, his sister, who I had never met because they were estranged, emails me out of nowhere and starts telling me all these things about him. And I was like, oh, Jesus. Like, you know, I did not know that this was, you know, the reason why y'all were estranged. And
I know so many women who have dealt with an emotionally abusive situation. I won't say like yours, but certainly akin in many ways. And they have always been approached towards the unraveling, towards the end. They have always been approached by other women who were either like painted as crazy or, you know, like whatever, or just out of this person's life for, you know, no reason. Don't worry about it. Always, though, other women, when they get a sense that this person is teetering on the edge of leaving this relationship, they reach out and they say, so you don't know me,
right?
But I think I have an idea about what you're going through. And so, so I think that I think with this piece, it is very both kind of culturally, right? He is speaking to like a time period and a society, but it is also, it feels so personal, I think, in so many places, especially one of the lines that really, I mean, other than like the amazingly beautiful image of there's a crack in everything. And that's how the light gets in. It's so powerful. And I am a big old nerd, and I cannot help but think about like the Doctor Who Pandora crack. If anybody is a friend, it'll be in the show notes. Like that is the crack that I think of. They also do love a little bit, and not to make light of this like very powerful moment, but I do love that you saw a butt crack.
I was
and
just
you were like, close.
There's a
but
crack
not quite.
in everything.
Exactly. Like,
Thank you, Kate. I was afraid to go there,
but you know what? I can do you one better, little butt crack, because you're not actually like there's, sir, madam, them, you. There is a crack in everything, not just this little butt. And but it's also, you know, and I can hear him saying, forget your perfect offering. That's another line that has always stuck with me, and I think it goes with very much this idea of kintsugi and the idea that there are cracks in everything. Like, don't fuck with, like, do not get caught up in perfection, because it's actually not true. And I think going back to kind of the experience and being made to feel like there's something wrong with you, right? That there is a perfect version of yourself that you are not. And that's why there are problems.
Right.
That's why this relationship isn't working, because you aren't bringing the perfection that you are supposed to be. And so, you know, I think obviously there's a lot there, but again, also going back to like the renewal, right? So, you know, we're starting out like the birds are saying in the morning, right? Start again. don't worry about what's gone or what's coming, right? Like be here right now and live with these imperfections. And, you know, I also love it because it's not saying forget the past.
Right.
It's not saying like cover it up and pretend it didn't happen. But it goes very much. I think what I also love, you know, it's not just that these cracks can be beautiful in us, but no matter what, beautiful or not, they're a part of us now.
Yeah.
We do carry them for the rest of our lives. And it doesn't really matter if we want to get rid of them or not, right? We can dress them up. We cannot dress them up, but they're there. And there's an honesty, I think, about both that practice of repair and then also this song that's like, it's there and it's a part of you. And it's not even like, and it's good or it's bad. It's just, it just is, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Anyway,
I love that too. The ring the bells that still can ring.
Yeah.
Right.
Oh.
Because what that tells you is that like there are bells that cannot ring, that are just busted, broken, dented, and you can't, and you have to leave those bells behind. Right. But when you ring the bells that still can ring, there is the silence from the ones that can't is still a presence in that moment. You know, and so that's one of my things that I love most about this is that it both acknowledges what you have left and leaves an empty space for what you have lost.
Yeah, the seat at
and
the table.
Those things together, like fit together so beautifully.
I also love it because I'm not the only thing that got cracked. Right? So I love just the scene that gets set with ring the bells that still can ring. Like I picture just like a wasted city, right? With like several demolished, like I actually think of some of the footage, and this is just me, but I go to like some of the footage that they show after the bombings, the air bombings in Europe, right? And there are these old churches crumbling. Are you right there with me, Amy?
Yes, that's what I imagine when I see this is like rubble in London from the bombings in World War II. How did we both go there?
Well, it's powerful imagery, and also we live in a Western culture where we have learned a lot about that, and we are also very poetic people, and rubble goes really well with any sort of, I don't know, I think metaphor about destruction, but it is just that, right? Like, I don't, or for me, at least it's evoking this, like, it's bigger than just me. And I think that's it. I think that's also something that it sounds like you kind of discovered through the process of recognizing this, right? That like this problem, because it was painted as you, right? You're the problem, you're the broken thing, but actually like it was not you. Right? Like it's a wider demolition.
It is. It's a massive demolition. And the entire, you know, like my entire life was like destroyed in so many ways. And I had to rebuild from that, which was a devastating experience. And yet one for which I'm so incredibly grateful, because you don't fall into the hands of a sociopath by accident. Like he knew that I was the perfect victim because I'd grown up in abuse. Right. So being treated like that feels like love. It feels normal to me. You don't question anything but yourself when you've been abused, especially as a child. So the thing that like I regret so much about it, and if I could go back in time, I would absolutely undo it. But having been through it, I was able to work through from childhood on. Like I just combed through all of it and did all of that work. And now I'm realizing that like my entire personality for most of my life has been like, you know, 6 trauma responses in a trench coat, you know, like that was my entire, right?
Like a little raccoon stuck in there just for fun.
Exactly. Exactly. And so once I discovered that and realized, like, separated out what was genuinely me from what was the me that was afraid that someone was going to hurt me if I didn't behave in a certain way, or going to stop loving me, or going to, you know, like all of these things that had happened to me throughout my life. when I realized that I could be more genuine, that I could be more myself, and that I didn't even know who myself was because I had been raised in this from birth, it has been such a wonderful experience, such a blossoming of self. And I'm discovering things. I'm happier than I have ever been in my entire life. I have less anxious, less anxiety, less depression.
Wow.
I am loving my life right now. It is amazing. And I don't know that I would have gotten there if he hadn't completely destroyed it. That doesn't give him a pass. Like, he is, let's just be clear, not fucking forgiven. But and that will never happen. I do not believe in forgiveness.
And it doesn't have to, right?
Yeah.
No, right,
But,
exactly.
Like,
you don't forgive people who aren't sorry.
No, you can't.
Right.
No.
That's actually the one requirement.
Yeah. Exactly. But the point of that all being that, like, all of these things can exist
for your work.
No,
right?
he doesn't.
Because you've been able to pull yourself and build yourself a stronger foundation because of this. And I think going back to that in this song as well, right? Like, demolition has happened. Destruction has happened. There is a crack in everything. And that can be both metaphorical or in this moment, in this scene, like, nothing has gone untouched. Right. But I think you're also pointing out another, just going along with, like, the cracking, right? It allows for new growth.
Yes.
And like sidewalks, right? When nature finds a way and it cracks the sidewalk over a whole bunch of time and life sprouts through, right? Like,
and
plants
it can be beautiful.
It
like,
can.
That's the thing. And so, like, I'm grateful that I had the opportunity for me to do growth that I might not have done had I not been absolutely devastated by this horrible experience, And so, like, I am really grateful for that, while at the same time maintaining not forgiven, not okay, under no circumstances is this all right, is this kind of behavior okay? But, like, again, like, so many different things, so many opposing things can be true at the same time, and, like, I feel like my ability to be grateful that I have the life that I have now, and understand that had I not been put through such a terrible thing, I may not have done that on my own. I'm incredibly proud of myself and excited about my life and thrilled about the stuff that I get to do and the people that I get to work with, Amy. It's been really wonderful, and I'm incredibly grateful. And going back to this song, it's the saddest freaking song. It is a devastating song. And yet within all of this sadness and devastation, there's hope. There's the bells that can still ring. You don't need a perfect offering. The birds, they sing. The birds are still singing, right? Like, I mean, oh my God, right? It's just, there's so much, and we're unpacking like a fraction of this song. It is so powerful.
Do you have any idea where you might have heard that line? Because you were familiar with the line before you'd heard the song. Do you have any idea where that might have come in?
As odd as it is, I think he said it to me at one point.
Oh, yeah.
I think he mentioned it at one point. I think he said there's a crack in everything, and that's how the light gets in. I think he said it during a podcast.
Oh.
And it just stuck
good
with...
podcast line.
I don't know. I've destroyed them all. They're all, all, I've deleted every single one that had our voices together on them. Like, they're all gone.
Yeah.
But yeah, like, it's, I think it was him. And so and that's the thing that, like, from this terrible, horrible, terrible experience and this terrible person, the seed that ended up being me able to move on from that was planted, right? Underneath the terrible devastation he was, making in my life. And so I don't hate that. No. I don't hate that he was the one who gave me something beautiful that I could work with, to move forward.
What a layer. What a layering of this.
Right?
Ringing the bell.
That also goes with that difficult thing of holding several oppositional truths, right?
Yes.
That, again, just because somebody did bad things in my life and to my life doesn't mean that all of them That's so
Right.
hard. I think that, like, because it would, it is wonderful to have things like podcasts or like pictures that are going back to like the tangible versus the intangible, right?
Yeah.
It's kind of impossible to take the people that we are today and remove the people that have wronged us from us. It is always
Right.
wonderful to have the very cathartic, like, ooh, but I can burn this.
Well, and the thing is that people aren't all bad. Like, if he was just nothing but a monster, like, I never would have fallen in love with him. Like, he was pretending to be a lot of things that he wasn't. But there were things, he was funny. He was smart. Like, there were things about him that
liked
were
Leonard Cohen,
of value.
So, yeah.
Yeah. So it makes it sad, too, because, like, it's so much worse to be the person who lives like that than to be the person who gets to escape them. He doesn't ever get to escape who he is, right? This is going to be an endless cycle of this kind of devastation that he's just going to do over and over and over again, hurting anybody who ever loves him. Like, that's a terrible way to have to live your life.
Yeah.
And for me, like, I get to live the life that I have now, which is amazing. Like, I'm married to a man who became one of my closest friends during this period of complete devastation. We became very close and we ended up getting together. And now we have this like incredible, wonderful life. And he is so good and kind to me, and he shines a light on the things that I do as a result of all of this. Like, when I have one of my trauma responses in a trench coat, he'll sit down and be like, hey, you may want to look at this. And it's really helped me to not fall back into old patterns and old habits of mine that I brought in because I am, a bunch of trauma responses in a trench coat.
Yeah.
So like all of that has been incredibly wonderful. And, and I'm still like, my kids and their dad, who was my first husband, he's wonderful. Like, we have a great relationship. We're all very close. We went through all of this together. Like, their dad, of course, it wasn't as deep, but he was there for all of us while we were going through it,
Right.
And that has made us closer, as a family. And so it's been, it's a terrible experience, but I'm so happy right now, and I'm so at peace right now, and everything is so much better than it had ever been before. So in the end, I'm grateful. It's a mix of things. Leonard Cohen is a mix of light and dark.
Yeah.
I'm a mix of light and dark. There's a lot of darkness. I'm writing a lot of darkness into my novels that I didn't used to have, which is really interesting.
Yeah.
So like the flavor of me as a writer has changed fundamentally. But I'm not mad at it. Like I kind of like the textures that I'm able to bring into the work that I'm doing now, that because I was so bouncy and happy and always, no, everything's great. This like very tense, brittle, everything is awesome. Ha ha ha. Isn't it funny? Kind of person that I was before. Now I am a person that can embrace both the funny and the light and the dark and all of it. And it's been such a fascinating and wonderful discovery.
Well, going back to, again, I'm sorry, Amy.
I was just saying I'm in the same spot you are, Lani, where I'm the happiest I've ever been in the best relationship I've ever had, coming out of some trauma. And it is, he does, just like you were saying with your husband, he has to stop me and say, I was just telling Kate about this earlier today. I was like, he had to sit me down again. After I was spiraling, and he's very kindly. He's so patient. So patient. He very, he has to often say, oh, you can't see it. I'm like pushing down. He has to help me.
Amy's currently taking it from an 11 to a 6.
Yeah, exactly. Maybe 6.5.
Maybe.
So yeah, this speaks to me too. And I wanted to say, since we're talking to you, a creator who helps other people create, the thing about ring the bells that still can ring, forget your perfect offering. You didn't say those words while I was in your writing workshop, but we had this thing that you said, which was be a mess, capital B, capital A, capital M. And so when we were all stressing over what we were doing, we would just remind each other, be a mess. And I think that is, a more casual way of saying what this
Forget your perfect offering.
Exactly.
Yes,
exactly.
yeah.
Do not try to be perfect. You can be a mess. Just ring those bells. And so I can see that your own ability to bring other people's creativity out, I can see that coming from this idea too.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
And it very much sounds like you went from a very unstable foundation, right? That had been, that you had not done necessarily the work to repair, but had kind of like, is it shellacked? What is the,
is it like plaster? Like, you sort of plaster over the cracks, and then the cracks come through.
And like, you know, with a paintbrush and a file, like making sure, like, and going back and attending to the look of things.
Exactly.
And I come back to the kintsugi, right? Which is like letting it show. Right.
Yeah.
And being okay and acknowledging, and then at times even finding the gold. Right. I think there are a couple of different things, but finding the value in destruction.
And in the presentation of perfection, you are reflecting an illusion. And that itself is unfulfilling. You know, the cracks and the gold and the light seeping through. That is what real life looks and genuinely feels like. And when you are able to be your genuine self, because you know that that's okay, it opens up so much of that energy you spend standing in front of the crack going, don't look over here, everything is fine.
Let me just tidy this up. Well, and actually what you were saying, there's a you know, and I say this as somebody whose trauma response is hypervigilance.
Yes.
I got you.
There's a hypervigilance to the presentation of perfection, because as you were saying, everybody has got a different idea of perfection. And so constantly trying to adapt, not just to cover up what I might think is wrong with me, right?
Right.
But like what you were saying, where you're trying to both mirror that everything's okay, and then also that it's okay for this person. So it is do our ideas of okay line up? Is everything okay? I have often, you know, I've always been too big of a mess to really effectively aim for perfection. But it goes back to, what am I okay being, like, which cracks am I okay having out there, right?
Right.
And so I think that even when I'm like, yeah, I'm okay being a mess, it's like, nope. I'm only okay being a little bit of a mess. I'm showing them the tip of the iceberg mess. And yeah.
Well, there's also like a self-protective part that's like, you know, if nobody can criticize me, then I'm not going to have anybody saying something terrible to me or like hurting me with like something like that, you know? Yeah. And so there is this sense that you want to be perfect just so that nobody can criticize you. But like the thing is that everybody's going to criticize you anyway. Like as somebody out there is going to, you know, decide to say something to you or be a jerk about something. And to me, like once you get to the point where that becomes their problem and not yours, like the energy, the emotional energy, the, you know, like what it frees up for you to do with this, you know, and hello, Mary Oliver, one wild and precious life, right?
Yeah. Yep.
It's like mad.
That's a podcast. We did it.
Let's say the thing though that we have to say.
Oh, shoot. Okay.
If you would like
I forgot. I was going to get somebody to like fake it and write in and ask for one.
Okay.
And I forgot.
Okay. Well, that's fine.
So do the thing. But,
if you would like us to recommend something that we think what might be good for you to read, there's a form on our website at findinggoodbones.com, and you can fill it out. Tell us a little bit about yourself or about what you're feeling, and we will give you some advice. Here's the problem. We are on episode whatever, 10, 11, whatever, and no one has done this yet. No. Get your shit together and write us. Make us work. Somebody go in it.
Somebody out there, send in findinggoodbones.com. Go out there and give them a challenge.
Do it.
Someday this is going to make an amazing closing piece. But not today, dear listener, not today. Yeah. So thank you so much, Lani. Now, I should have asked earlier, is it Lani Diane?
Oh, it's
Lani Diane
Lani.
Rich. Should I
use
all of your names all the time?
my official, like my business name, my professional name is Lani Diane Rich, because Lani Rich always felt very stilted to me. Like, I'm like, you need a little zhuzh in there. You need a little something extra. So I go by Lani Diane Rich professionally, because that is my name. But in regular conversation with friends, as we've shared deeply in this lesson. We're buddies now. You can
for
call
me,
Lani.
we're best friends, and I'll be telling people
best friends.
Like,
Absolutely.
I'm gonna say to my kiddo who's real obsessed with best friends right now, because she doesn't really. I'm gonna be like, the next time that she's like, "You're not my best friend, Mama," which is happening, I'm gonna be like, "That's fine. Lani Diane Rich is my best friend now."
Yeah, let's put that on a t-shirt. Lani Diane Rich is my best friend now.
Yeah. Sorry, Eleanor.
It's going to be our first merch. It's going to be our first merch in our store that we will have maybe someday.
I love it.
Oh my God. Yeah. Yes. And yes. So thank you so much for joining us, Lani.
Thank
Amy,
you.
thank you for hosting. And also me. And you, dear listener, thank you for joining us as we go finding good bones. I climbed up a very big hill once in Scotland, and I'm pretty sure it was also a mountain, but that's about.
No mountains in Scotland, case.
I'm unconvinced. I remain unconvinced. I'm going to Google that and put it in the show notes.
Okay, what you just heard there was Kate proudly saying she had climbed a mountain in Scotland. And me, almost before she finished her sentence, saying, "There are no mountains in Scotland, Kate." So I wanted to prove after the recording that I'm 100% right. So I took to Wikipedia. Here is the first sentence and an entry called Mountains and Hills in Scotland. Scotland is the most mountainous country in the United Kingdom. Sorry.